The unthinkability of lynching is one of the open problems of our era today. The thing that we rigidly insist upon and reassert in the face of a government that openly embraces its own lynching. So we can't just, take a few actions and think that things will click back the way they used to be. We have to rethink the norms of the past in order to reestablish them into something new today. So when we look at an early film, much early, like 1939 Western film, The Oxbow Incident, which is about lynching and how lynching is bad, we have to be critical of what its framework is to get to how this problem is actually open, and not just this, problem of humanity sense, which is honestly how the Oxbow Incident treats things. We need to be more politically engaged with this problem. So you have a Western mob that's not waiting for the law, and it thinks it's caught people who've, cattle rustled. And with a bit of circumstantial evidence, that's enough. They're going to execute these people. And the film is sitting with the dread of that execution, which happens. And you have this moment where you have a few dissenters who speak out weakly. They're like the weakest of the town. There's no engagement with the mob. It's just voting, yes or no. The majority gets their way and hangs these people. And then the law shows up and says there was no crime to begin with. And so we get this wiping away of, a false crime with the real crime of the lynching. And what do we get with that? Everyone goes back town, despondent in the bar, and then the leader of the mob rejects his son for not participating, and his son rejects him more forcefully, which causes the leader to unalive himself. So what we're striving for with all of this drama is to get to this point where we're reading the letter of the man who was lynched, the leader, and he eloquently puts into words how terrible a lynching is and its injustice. And these are words that couldn't be delivered to the mob directly. We had to go through this process of actually committing the mob violence for us, the viewer, to hear these words properly and, etherealize them as a response. And so this apotheosis leads to the protagonist, who's been a passive observer throughout all of this, to then change the course of his life, go see the widow and help raise her children, support the wrecked family that he himself was at least witness to, if not a part of. So all of this dramatization shows that lynching is bad, and we're dwelling with it ourselves uncomfortably. We see people who are ribald with their enjoyment. We see people who are vicious and vindictive. And we see the utter inadequacy of standing against the lynch mob. And so the only stance we can really take here is don't get there in the first place. We need a stronger foundation of society, a stronger presence of actual law to prevent lynch mobs from happening. Again, in this situation, obviously there is a very clear reference to black men being lynched as well and the injustice of that, but this is different. But I think it's completely inadequate to watch this film and then give ourselves a pat on the back and say, oh, this is sad, we should just not let this happen and move on. We need a character like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood to make an ethical stand and back that stand up with violence in the face of the mob. And it's not about this fantasy, like this power fantasy of, we can always prevent these problems, that these aren't undoing aspects of society. It's not about it not being undoing. It's about not doing nothing and not leaving something like a person's life up to the mob, up to, the democratic majority of what people want. You have to make ethical stands and reject injustice, even at your own cost. And no one's willing to do that in this film. Our response to any kind of lynching can't be, well, that's too bad, or people are bad, or this misanthropic, this is like the worst of humanity, that we got to break past this somehow. Hand-wringing is not the right response. It's action and the implementation of justice. Everyone in that town should have been arrested. Every member of a lynch mob should be arrested, tried. That's the only proper response. That's not what the film does. People just get sad at the bar. It's pathetic. The whole town should have imploded.